People do not think about product development as a growth channel, but it is. The idea that you're gonna build a $100 million company with one SKU doesn't make any sense to me. We have a bunch of small businesses in the US that are getting murdered. The idea that you're gonna trade 60 grand, 75 grand, 100 grand a year for some future $15 an hour factory job.
It's just stupid.
It's just stupid.
Meet Michael Santis of Doris Dev, the product development company behind some of your favorite consumer brands. In this episode, Michael breaks down what it actually takes to build great physical product, why China still wins on quality manufacturing, and the expensive lessons most founders learn the hard way.
I've seen people come through the door that have raised $5 million pre-seed, fall flat on their face immediately. And I've seen people scrape together 40 grand on a Kickstarter and like launch an incredible company.
How fleshed out are the ideas?
I can't tell you the amount of times we've been handed something that is like, this looks really cool, but like, do you have 3 years and a few $1 million to just spend trying to figure it out?
Working with and in China must have been absolutely mental.
China is where you make high quality product. Any belief that China is where you make low quality product is a legacy 90s point of view. If we go to war with China, I'm like, fucking go to war with China? Nobody's gonna care about your plastic widget.
Here, cheers, lads.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Pleasure.
Yeah, this is actually, it's definitely the business I think I'm most excited to hear more about this week, because it's so unique to any other guest that we've had on the pod. Yeah.
No, I do think that is one of the cool parts about Doris is like, it's very much a non-commoditized space. There's not like a bunch of people you go to do this work. Yeah.
So for most of our listeners will know who Doris Dev are. They're deep in the e-com operator world. For people who aren't as familiar, can you describe how it works?
Yeah. Doris Dev's a full stack product design and development company. So what that means in practice is folks come to us and we help them take an idea from inception all the way through the setting up of the supply chain for scale. And we've been around for about 10 years, about 30 folks on the team, half in New York, half in Hong Kong. 3 like core services in-house: industrial design, engineering, and supply chain setup work. So basically, somebody comes to us with an idea. They're like, hey, we want to make an electric flosser, for example. Flaus, a client of ours. And we kind of start out doing some lightweight engineering work up front, and then we step into design, take that from design into the engineering work, actually building out the CAD, the 3D files, and then we pull in folks from our Hong Kong team to go out and find factory partners that are a good fit for execution on the project. And then we oftentimes help support folks in the long tails, right? We'll continue operating their supply chains on an ongoing basis, help them with running changes, adding new colorways in, those sorts of things. And ideally, when those businesses are successful, it's like, all right, well, now we're working on product number 2 and 3 and 4, and just keep the ball rolling. The processes are also really long, so we end up having these really deep embedded partnerships with folks.
They're stuck with you, basically.
Yeah, 100%. Once we get into bed together, like that's it. We're stuck together for a long time.
Class.
And are electronics your sweet spot, or do you work with every
We really run the gamut. I think the way that I think about Doris is, maybe if you look at branding agencies or other types of folks, they end up focusing in a specific niche. The Doris has developed a process, and we're an expert in the process, and that process allows us to unpack and build product in a bunch of different directions as a result of it, right? So, in the early days of Doris, it was a lot simpler, the work that was getting done, working with businesses like Blue Land, like Great Jones, Lalo, where it's like, hey, we're building plastic things or metal things, but all relatively simple. And now it's started to skew towards more complexity. And I think largely due in part to, back in 2017, 2018, you could go out and raise a good amount of money pre-launch, pre-revenue for product businesses, because VCs didn't really understand how to value these things, and they were valuing them very incorrectly. And so, as a result, people were like, oh, I want to be the Warby Parker of X, right? And it was like, I want to be the Warby Parker of home organization. I want to be the Warby Parker of cookware, or whatever.
That's enough to get your hands on 5 million quid.
Literally, yeah. And so then over time, I think we've started to see more complexity and actual innovation coming through the door to us, just as a function of you can't really go out and raise money against, the simplest, easiest thing in the world. It's like, oh, what's the differentiator? How are you thinking about it differently?
Nice.
So we've started to skew more towards consumer electronics. I would say it's probably 50% of the work that we do, but we still do a ton of work on, simpler plastic and metal items as well.
And generally speaking, so when most folks come to you guys. Yeah. Like I always think there's like two types of businesses in the world at the moment. You have a lot of supplements businesses, fashion businesses that are effectively like white label products where you go to a factory already creating them, you create an amazing brand around it, and they're really just marketed businesses to a certain extent. Whereas the other side of it is deep R&D, you're creating something that's truly unique.
Yep.
How fleshed out are the ideas that typically come to you guys? Like, can people come with just like a very loose idea around something that they want to create, and you're just doing the deep work on it to figure out how to bring it to market and what the product will look like?
Certainly. I think there's maybe like a further level of delineation on like the R&D piece, because I actually think there's like kind of two paths forward, because one doesn't actually require insane product innovation. Maybe it's like design something to make it look and feel better, but there's like a unique insight from a positioning point of view that unlocks something, right? So like that's Canopy on our side, and we'll talk about incubations a little bit later, but like Canopy, the original insight was humidifiers can be a beauty wellness tool. And prior to that, they'd always been positioned as like, you're sick, you've got allergies. Like it's just an always on solution, it's a solution for specific ailments at specific moments in time.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, what if we pitch this as like a beauty tool? And like this, you need this on every night. It's going to make your skincare work harder for you, those sorts of things. So I think there's a path forward that's like actually creative positioning is all that's really required, and like punching up something that's been, dominated by legacy brands that kind of look like shit, and nobody's really touched the design side of things in a while. And then I think the flip side of it is actual innovation into a category. And sometimes that innovation might simply be we're smashing a few things into one device, as opposed to like, oh, this is like genuinely unique or differentiated. But at the same time, sometimes it is, oh yeah, it's super unique. So folks come to us with like a high level idea of what they want to accomplish. And, of varying levels of fidelity. And, some founders come in with like the most detailed document I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm like, wow, I love that. This is amazing. Others come in and it's like a few bullet points and they're like, all right, we're ready to rock.
I had a dream last night about this thing. Can you make it a reality? And could you do it tomorrow for me?
Well, that's a common question too. It's like, I need this in 3 months. And I'm like, all right, you should have reached out to me a year ago.
How many pitches start with, so I was in the pub the other night?
Honestly, like a fair amount. Like definitely when you unpack, that's not the story they'll tell investors, but that's the story they'll tell me in private. But like when folks bring those in, we do a lot of work up front to unpack what is possible, right? Because people come to us with ideas that are, hey, like, you know what, yes, you could do this, but like, do you have 3 years and a few $1 million to just spend trying to figure it out? I read a story like years ago about how like the original Keurig machine took 8 years to build. So like, granted, it was in the 90s, so work got done a lot differently. I can't even imagine what it was like pre-internet. I don't know how they did all that stuff, but like, it took 8 years to launch the original Keurig. And now if somebody came to me and said, we want to make a Keurig competitor, I'd be like, okay, it's, it'll take 12 to 18 months. It's not going to take 8 years though. Yeah. So I think that's the other piece of the puzzle is like, all good engineering work has already been done, ideally, right? Like the less reinventing of the wheel that you can do, the better, and the more like repurposing of existing systems and figuring out interesting ways to kind of daisy chain them all together to make something new and interesting is most exciting.
It's not a million miles away from the software world where it's like all of the components exist. Like we're using standard databases, front-end libraries, back-end frameworks.
100%.
And you're just kind of figuring out how to stitch it all together and make everything work together.
I mean, I think back to the Raiden days, we were working with an agency based in Canada, like a dev shop. They had built a platform called Solidus, which was a fork of Spree Commerce, which was what we were using for our ecom backend. So it was like this custom build. We had a huge bill every month to this dev shop. Yeah. I had to go into the AWS server and like literally drop images into every individual folder. And then I had to QA it and make sure. And now it's like, oh, Shopify exists. Oh, great. Like, yeah. And it's like, 15 minutes on YouTube and like you can probably configure a Shopify site pretty decently, right? Yeah, and it's like, we've come a long way. And so like product, physical, digital product, whatever it is. Yeah.
I think like any great agency, regardless of the space that you're in, whether it's a software code shop or whether it's a marketing agency, you guys on the product design side, how do you decide what you're going to work on and what you're not going to work on?
It's a good question. So for us, I think the Doris Dev doesn't do any marketing. And it's, like a function of there's a right place, right time thing with product, given the fact that it takes a really long time to actually build product. So if you miss us, and like it is what it is. And what that means as a result is we have always prioritized taking on projects that are going to be commercialized.
Sure.
And there are a lot of folks that do a lot of work that never sees the light of day on the design side, physical product or digital product even, right? Like it just, design work gets done and it never sees real life. So we've always prioritized folks that we are very confident are going to be able to get the business off the ground and get the product in the market.
And is that by like assessing the founder or just assessing?
Yeah, there's like partially vibes, partially like, how much money do you actually have in the bank to get this thing off the ground, and like having those frank conversations out of the gate, because I think that's the other big piece of the puzzle is like if you're building custom product, you are investing a substantial amount of money up front.
And your reputation.
100%. Yeah. So, and like we want to build high quality product. And I think that's the other piece is like we have to put out a high quality product, because then somebody goes and buys one of the things that, we made for another client and they Google like who did this? And it's like, oh, then it comes back to Doris.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because like the oldest guard, I might get in trouble saying this, the oldest guard of clients, like there were back in, call it 2016 to 2018, maybe 2019, there was like this, oh, we don't talk about the fact that we work with Doris Dev. Like y'all exist, in the closet, like, and we did the design and engineering work. But now it's like, oh no, yeah, we worked with Doris Dev on this. And I think that's been like a really interesting sea change, because like back then investors were like, oh no, you need to own everything. It's all about vertical integration. And now people are like, I don't know, Ryan on this podcast, like I built a $50 million business with 3 employees, right? Like, and an army of agencies supporting you. So,
and again, how did he do it? By taking a product that already existed and going after new positioning in a huge market.
Correct.
We're going to sell a shower head to a whole host of women who are in their 20s and 30s as a beauty product. Correct. It's just taking something that's already there. It's funny, you're probably the only other person I know that's ever worked in this space in terms of...
So I worked with for a guy, Liam Casey, who's called, in Ireland, he's called Mr. China.
Okay.
And so he would have set up PCH, let me think now, 35 years ago.
Oh yeah,
he went
I'm familiar with PCH.
Oh, you know PCH?
Yeah, for sure.
You must know some of the guys. You probably know Chaz Flexman, actually.
Yeah, of course.
And stuff like that, and a bunch of others. So I worked with
What a name.
Yeah. Chaz was at Pattern Brands.
Yeah, exactly.
Both the early days Pattern companies, Equal Parts and Open Spaces. Yeah.
No way, gas. It's funny. I've heard your name for 10 years, like in a way, but never actually talked to anyone in Doris Dev or spent any time with anyone there. But it's such a small group of people that you can go to if you have an idea who know how to make stuff. And like the reality, like you did engineering, you've been interested in the world of product for a long time, but you wouldn't have a clue how to go and build a product tomorrow. No. You'd be the guy giving a detailed report to you. I'd be the guy giving you 2 bullet points. Yeah. Do you know?
Hey, listen, both ways can work. Yeah. I mean it. Like truly. Like there are people that are like, I need this to be 99% fidelity. There are other folks that are like 75% in ship. Let's go, move fast. That's it. Right?
But how many, when people come to you, because obviously if it's a big project, it's going to take not 8 years, but it'll certainly take 18 months. How many people come to you with, say, let's call it something closer to whitelisting that you can do in like 6 months, and they're more marketing people? Yeah. Do you say no to those projects?
No, we absolutely take those on. Because I think at the end of the day, too, it's like we have a really robust network built out in Southeast Asia and China. So like we can support folks with off-the-shelf product all the time. Sure. And especially for people that were like, hey, we've executed on something full custom, we're managing that supply chain. Hey, I need X and Y and Z. Like I'm launching this new cream and I need bottles for it to go into. Like I need help with packaging, or like source some towels for me, or whatever that ultimately looks like. We do a ton of that work. And at the end of the day, it's all a function of like having it only really makes sense in the context of, hey, if we're working on a really big assortment, if somebody's just coming, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I just want to like go source a bunch of like pint glasses, it's like, go on Alibaba.
Do you mind me asking, is that because that's lower margin work for you guys, or is it that it's just not that interesting?
Well, so Doris Dev is, in the sea of competitors that exist around Doris, I would say very few do all of the things that we do in-house. A lot of them do components of it. But we have always positioned ourselves as a service provider. So what that means in practice is like, hey, we're hitting you as an operational expense, not in your margin. And a lot of our competitors are buying and selling goods.
Yeah.
So, if somebody goes to one of my competitors and says, I want to buy a pint glass, they're like, okay, great, I can buy it for 80 cents and sell it for $1. Like, we just don't do that. We align incentives differently with our clients and say like, hey, we're working on behalf of you. We're not working on behalf of the factory ultimately. So I think that's kind of the flip on it. And so as a result, people aren't like, oh yeah, let me pay you a monthly retainer to go source these pint glasses, right?
Yeah. This world, you know what? I've always thought it's like a black box. It's the Wild West still to this day, where no one really knows what goes on in the background. Yeah. And if you go to an agency, some of the competitors you mentioned where they're maybe not a service provider, they're buying and selling goods. Like they might sell the same product for one person for $10 a unit, another person $8 a unit, another person $18 a 100%. Unit, and you're just figuring out how much can I charge these people. Yep. But even back when we were working together in Wayflower, remember? We were thinking about the world of inventory. We were like, it doesn't feel like it's fully developed into a more open, honest system yet. And it feels like technology hasn't really gotten its hold on that black box world of Asia, et cetera, and all of that. 100%. And I'm always I think about it a lot personally, like how will that change over the next 15 years or 10 years or whatever else?
When you think about it, you have an idea for a product, you can set up a Shopify store in like 20 minutes. You can set up your Facebook ads, you can set up your online bank account. You can do a lot of it on your own without having to speak to a single human being.
Product is hard.
Product is tough. Yeah. One of the things I've actually seen recently, was you showed it to me, is Keychain, which now all of a sudden gives you access to a ton of manufacturers around the world that are already creating a product. And I think it's kind of wild that you could just search for, what was the thing we searched for?
We were looking up a food
chicken
product.
skin
Crisps.
Which someone had kind of
high protein crisps.
Yeah, okay, we love it.
And we looked it up, and I was just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna go and see how quickly I can get a manufacturer already making this product. And signed up for the platform. Within 20 minutes, like there's a quick sign up process. Within 20 minutes, I'm getting emails from manufacturers already creating this product around the world, where you can effectively just white label it and create your brand around it. But like, you guys are very different in that those are products that already exist in some capacity, very easy to replicate. And I think like a lot of brands these days are really just, as I said, marketing companies rather than pure product companies.
100%. Yeah.
You have brought in a very cool product today that would actually be cool to whip out. And there we go.
Had it ready to rock.
Something like this.
Yeah.
Okay. So back massagers or massage guns.
Yeah.
Like haven't been really disrupted in the market for a few years now. It's a product that really took off during COVID. What's the process for somebody comes to you and they have an idea for doing something like this?
Yeah. So for something like this, this is Rally Orbital Massager is what it's referred to as. For this, I will say this was a very detailed brief laid out, had a really clear perspective and point of view on what we wanted it to be at the end of the day. Huh? No. The inspiration for it was a car buffer. So basically that's a function. What that means is like make the thing spin really, really fast instead of percussing. And the reason that was the inspiration is because back in the day, car buffers were, you know, kind of the OG way in which people got self-massage done. So we basically started in, you know, probably a 6-week sprint.
Just imagining like a guy holding a massive car buffer up to his wife back in the day to massage it.
For sure.
Weirdest picture of all time, like, no?
Oh yeah. And like, I've heard stories from like guys who are like physical therapists who are like, oh yeah, I was, you know, when I was getting my master's, like we would literally like wheel in, like in the 90s, like gigantic car buffers, because they weren't just like little appliances, like they would wheel them in to like use on the athletes. And like, this is crazy, but I kind of love it. So we start by like tearing apart a bunch of existing in-market product that has similar subassembly systems that are going to be relevant for this. So, you know, in the case of this, it was a bunch of car buffers, but it's not uncommon for us to pull in other things depending on kind of the needs of the product. And the goal of that is to really define what are the internals going to be, what is the sizing and spacing going to look like. And the goal of that, especially with innovative product, is to ensure that the design, like the industrial design team, when they get their hands on it, they're designing around an envelope that actually makes sense. I can't tell you the amount of times we've been handed something that is like, this looks really cool, but it's not going to be real ever. And like it needs to change in 30 different ways to fit everything inside of it.
Wiring doesn't work. It's going to break here. You're going to have a ton of defaults.
It needs to be 30% larger to fit the internals inside of it. So then we go through we step through a design process, you know, rooted in kind of like foundational strategy of what the existing market looks like and how you want to differentiate and push and pull on that. The goal here was to like build a premium high-end product and compete with kind of the higher end Hyperices and Therabodies of the world. You know, that I think the design process on this took about 12 weeks. And, you know, coming out of the backside of that, we've got beautiful renders. And then we also look to build what's called a looks like prototype. So work with some third-party folks to build something that is representative in terms of like form and texture and materials. And then the engineering team picks back up. The team in Hong Kong gets pulled in as well. We start looking for potential factory partners that would be a good fit. We start doing a bunch of benchtop prototyping. So at our office in Brooklyn, we've got, you know, 6 or 7 3D printers that are just going all the time. We're doing works like prototyping, which can sometimes be looks like as well, but like really just validating the internal mechanisms, making sure that everything has been really thought through in detail, and things change over time as a result. Like this originally was like just a very skinny little post coming out of it. And it was like, we kept like running into this issue where people are like trying to attach the pad and it's like wonky and like the attachment force wasn't enough. So we're like, oh, we're worried it's going to fly off. So it's like, okay, things change over time. They get pushed and pulled on as you start to prototype and validate. You know, once the engineering team has kind of really fleshed out all the detailed CAD drawings, we found a few suppliers. We generally look to have a few, 2 or 3 build prototypes for us. And like, that's kind of like a vetting process, a homework assignment for the factories as far as we're concerned. And it also gives them the ability to kind of like dig in and say, hey, this is actually, we would approach this slightly differently. Here are the changes we would make on the engineering side of things. You know, at the end of that process, we generally award a vendor the program and then we kick off tooling. So essentially tooling is building a giant waffle maker is the best way to describe it, right? Like you build a waffle maker for all the componentry so that you can just pump these things out at scale. And then the process like continues to get iterative, right? We get samples off the tools, we evaluate those samples. Not everything's going to be right. Like getting this to be, you know, sub 1 millimeter gap, like takes a lot of time, energy, and effort and iteration. So, you know, start to iterate on those sorts of things until we land on, okay, finished product is where we need it to be. During that time, any like compliance work that needs to get done will get done in collaboration with some third-party labs. We build out really robust quality control documentation. So like, you know, a checklist that's super long, that's like all of this needs to get looked at before anything actually gets shipped out of a factory. Send third-party quality control inspectors down on the factory floor. And like, because we've got boots on the ground, we'll send folks from our team down as well. And then, yeah, just step into mass production, finished good, get packed into boxes, loaded onto a container, and shipped wherever you need them shipped.
It's honestly the most stress. I'm stressed listening to you talking about it. Like, it is the longest process of all time, and like there's always something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
As you say, like, it's not attaching properly here, whatever it happens to be.
For sure. I mean, you know, like airing my own, like it's not even dirty laundry. It's just like the nature of product, right? We had initially intended to launch this in April of this year. We ended up launching it in June. In March, I was out in China visiting with the factory, and we got a bunch of prototypes, and we like noticed an issue. And like we spent the next 16 hours on the factory floor pulling a bunch of these units apart, like taking components out of the old prototypes that we had built, slamming them back in, and then testing to see if we could replicate the problem. We identified what the issue was, and it was like, hey, we need an extra month to like hammer out the detail on this. And like, but at the end of the day, you basically need folks who have done this over and over and over again to really de-risk the process. And like back to like what it, you know, where is Doris Dev focused its time, energy, and effort? It's on the process. And like this product development is not a straight line. There's no such thing as perfect product except for the Scrub Daddy. Like truly,
great product, by the way.
It's a great product. But like I'm like, I tell people all the time, like there's a reason Apple iterates every year. Like everything can always get made a little bit better. So like you get to PO number 1, great. You're like at the starting line. That's it. That's all you've done is got to the starting line. You're gonna keep going.
Years ago, kind of before pre-HappyStack, so I founded a sports betting company, and we went through an accelerator program over in Indianapolis. One of the mentors that we had as part of that program was Will Ahmed, who started Whoop. Mm-hmm. And like, when I say mentor, met him like twice. Yep. Hopped on a couple of calls with him for an hour. But he took us through the process of Whoop, the idea through to the product that we see now. And everybody looks at a Whoop, and it's beautiful, minimalist little strap that goes on your wrist and collects this amazing data that sits on your phone. He was telling me that like the first version of what they built, the idea that they had was basically they wanted to track people's blood pressure and heart rate over time to see if they could predict whether or not somebody was going to have a heart attack. That was the only thesis behind what the product was. And it started off as a brick that was maybe that by that you just, it was hooked up to a watch that you wore at night while you were in bed. And that was the initial version of their product.
Yeah.
And that allowed him to raise enough money to iterate, to make it smaller and smaller and smaller again, where they built it over 4 years before there was actually a product that they could bring to market. Yeah. You know, so it's crazy how much time, money, resources have to be spent on R&D for some of our favorite products before there's actually something that a person can use.
100%. I think one of the other things for me that's super interesting is folks like, there's like because they don't understand the nature of the iterative process of product, especially in a world of innovation, when some people will like give up because they can't have the perfect end state product with V1. Sure. Like, MVPs are important. Like getting product into market and getting user feedback is important. And there's like a story that the Allbirds founders tell around how when they started the company, they wanted to launch a carbon neutral shoe. And they spent like a couple of years trying to develop a carbon neutral shoe. And they like almost decided to kill the company because they couldn't get there. And then they kind of realized like, wait, like we've got a great shoe, let's get it out into the market. And now they have carbon neutral shoes, right? And it's like, you don't need to be at perfect ideal end state out of the gate. Like you still need to build a business and a brand, right? And like, you know, it takes a while to build a real brand. Like people build a company that has a word mark and a logo and a color palette and whatever, but like that's not a brand. Like that's not what a brand is. You need to like do so many other things before you're like, I need to get to this one version that is the perfect thing that I realized in my head that, at this moment in time. It's like, okay, but like, where do you want to compromise to get product into market and like, you know, get people excited about what you're trying to do?
It's important though not to hype it too much at the start. Like you look at Humane, for example. Yeah. If you go in with your MVP or your first version of your product and you hype the shit out of it, and everyone talks shit about it, you're over. Whereas if you just get it into market and get some feedback and start getting a little bit of early adoption, eventually you can hype it. If you know when you've got the right product, when you've raised enough money, when you've got a little bit of that. But yeah, that's why hardware's so hard, though.
Yeah. But it's a balancing act because we are in a world of distribution.
Yeah.
And like we've kind of committed to this world of distribution and like getting your name out there, getting your product out there. But if you don't have the product to back up the hype, like
Well, it's consumer.
Yeah.
If you're in the world of consumer, better be pretty bloody good if you're going to put a load of money behind it.
100%. I mean, you can only put lipstick on a pig for so long in the world of product, right?
Sorry,
Like,
that's lipstick. Though.
yeah.
That's a great product.
Yeah,
but
no.
that looks fucking phenomenal.
100%.
Yeah.
But like the product also has to be high quality, right? Because you can make something seem super high quality. I'm not going to chirp anybody on camera right now, but after I can chirp some people. But you know, like you have to build high quality product that like stands the test of time, because a good marketing team can sell a shitty product for a period of time, but at a certain point, it's all going to fall apart, right? You're going to get found out, and like, you know, I don't know. That's the thing for me. It's like people over-index into like, oh, brand and marketing. It's like, but if you don't have product right, none of that other shit is actually going to make a difference.
Sorry, jumping topic slightly. The last 5 years working with and in China must have been absolutely mental between COVID and then moving into tariffs in the last 12 months. What have been the biggest challenges for you guys?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a while, the biggest challenges were not being able to, we've got a team in Hong Kong, not being able to send those folks into China because that was like not possible, and us not being able to go to Hong Kong to spend time with the team. Because it was like a 7-day waiting period. So you like go and literally sit in a hotel room for 7 days, like crazy. Nobody did that. But you know, then after the fact, I think Doris in general, like that was a huge inflection point for our business. Like people were like sitting around in their homes, like coming up with product ideas left and right, and because they're like, I don't know, like sparking a joint in the middle of the workday. Like, wow, wouldn't this be cool? And I think like what that led to was like, okay, we're like Doris like really grew a lot during that period of time. So for consumer writ large, it was really interesting, and factories largely figured out a way to make it work. I would say obviously in the early days of COVID, it was a little scary and then again in 21 when there was 120 ships parked off the coast of Long Beach, like that was kind of crazy. Like people not getting their inventory in for holiday and like getting a bunch of cancellations as a result, not fun. And then, more recently with the tariff situation, and I think it's, largely unproductive. I like found myself in a situation where I'm on background for the Wall Street Journal tech reporter. I'm like in Costco, like shopping on the weekend. And I'm like, I say to my wife, like, can you roll the card? I got a freaking text. I'm like, why am I on background for the Wall Street Journal all of a sudden? But I think what my perspective is, China is where you make high quality product. Like to believe anything other than that is like a mistake. Any belief that China is where you make low quality product is like a legacy 90s point of view. It's not a point of view as to the product that comes out of China today. The amount of expertise, skill, and execution that exists inside of China in these factories is super high. So, the tariffs get rolled out, and the conversations were definitely like, we need to move out of China. I'm really scared, and for some businesses that we work with, like who are operating on a 10% contribution margin, the tariffs were so harsh that they like really could have pushed them out of business or something along those lines. But for most, it's like, hey, your product's a few dollars more expensive. You have a great factory. They do good work. They execute the way that you need them to execute. It's high quality. There's a reason.
Time.
Sometimes. Most of the time.
More than most. Yeah.
But like it's like there's a reason factories in Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia weren't winning bids on these products in the first place. And the idea that now just because things cost 30% more to get out of China or whatever it ends up being at the end of the day, that you should pick up your entire supply chain and move it and make that capital investment to do it and take on that risk to do it. I'm like actually build out a model and tell me if it's going to cost you, let's say, 150 grand to move your supply chain over. How long is it going to take you to pay that back? One, and like two, that doesn't account for any other things that could go wrong during this process. And you know, my POV is that, you know, some people are like, well, what if we go to war with China, or what if we stop trading with China altogether? And it's, nobody's going to care about your shit at that point. Like, nobody's going to care about it. So I don't know. I'm still like a big proponent of like China being a great place to manufacture high quality product. There are other geos that you can find good factories, but I think there's you know, kind of tier 2 factories that exist in China that are like, this isn't Foxconn, right? Like, you're not working with the best of the best in the world, but you're working with really good folks who maybe are even doing subcontract work for Apple and Samsung and whomever. Like, you can't find that in other areas of the world at scale, in a meaningful way, in a reliable capacity. So that's the tricky part in all of this.
The remarkable thing I find about China is, like, you can look at a lot of countries or regions and they're incredibly good at manufacturing something.
Yes.
Okay, like you look at the Germans, best cars in the world. They're phenomenal at it. You go to a place like Turkey, incredibly good when it comes to textiles and clothing. China do everything. And they do everything better than almost every other country in the world, bar maybe cars. I've heard Chinese cars aren't great, but there are, like BYD are beginning to kick off. So like, they are really phenomenal at everything. And we actually had, I won't name her, but like a world famous fashion designer that was in with us a couple of weeks ago, who sold her clothing brand 15, 20 years ago.
Women's clothing brands in the world over the last 40 years.
And she is now launching a new brand at some point over the next 12 months. And like, one of her big USPs is they're basing it out of China, and they want to double down on the fact that this is made in China. And that means the quality is really, really high. Because not only can you now afford it, because they're able to produce it so much cheaper than you'd ever get it produced in Turkey or Portugal or anywhere else, the quality is incredible. And there's going to be a whole flip around the narrative of Chinese manufacturing quite soon. Because I do think, like, Trump and whatever else obviously has played into the fact that, you know, anti-China, anti-Chinese manufacturing, but definitely there's going to be a flip back towards they are the best at what they do.
It's funny because the narrative at the start was, let's bring back onshore manufacturing. That's what the original narrative around it was. And like, the thought that the US is one of the best places ever, but that they could bring manufacturing back here is ridiculous. The skill set isn't here. The skill set isn't going to be here. Even if you wanted to start it now, I mean, you have to start teaching kids to do it. Like, you're talking about a 40-year program to change that. Plus, as you said earlier, it's shit work, most of it.
Sounds good.
It's shit work too. It's not enjoyable work as well.
The speed of response from American factories. Like, we were in an RFQ in the US for a product that should be US manufacturable, like furniture. And you know, we probably reached out to 12 factories, didn't hear back from 8, heard back from 2 of them 12 weeks later, heard back from the other 2 basically being like, oh, well, you'd have to invest about $250,000 into like equipment and machinery for us to be able to do this. And you're like, okay, if we can't even do that here right now, like what
are we meant to do?
What are we having a conversation?
Yeah, because North Carolina furniture, in theory, like, that has a little hub of it there. But it's not good. So that was ridiculous. The idea of tariffs is just like a way to charge money in theory to other countries, but really it ends up being the consumer here. So
it's just US-based companies.
Yeah, so
it's just breaking the back of US-based companies.
So it's going to be super interesting see how that narrative changes when the realization that, like, you just aren't going to be able to make stuff here.
Well, the most fucked up part about it truly is that the biggest companies in the US are the ones that are getting carved out. Because those are the ones who need to not be carved out.
Apple.
Like, if we're going to be serious about tariffing, like, those are the companies that shouldn't be carved out. Like, we have a bunch of small businesses in the US that are getting murdered. And like, the idea that you're going to trade people working for early stage consumer startups that are making 60 grand, 75 grand, 100 grand a year to like run marketing or do whatever it is that they do for some future $15 an hour factory job that like is not even close to being real today is like it's so far beyond the pale.
It's
to
just
me.
stupid.
It's just stupid. It's just stupid. And like, I don't know. It's honestly, it's very much a travesty, especially when you look at like, oh, the Supreme Court might strike all of this down. Like they might have to refund all of this tariff revenue. And like, it's like, okay, what have we been doing this whole time? like me, I can tell you what I've been doing, losing sleep. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
I was in China. I was in China at the end of March. Came back. I was like, all right, Sunday. I got my first board meeting in my new CEO seat. I'm like, I got to put this board deck together. I'm super busy. Yeah. I'm like, all right, Sunday I work all day, put this board deck together. Tuesday is Liberation Day, and the tariffs get rolled out. And I look at the board deck, and I'm like, this looks like I wrote it in literally a different fucking timeline. Like it doesn't even, 48 hours after it was produced, it now looked like a crazy person was talking about a time that never was real. And I'm like, God damn it, I got to do this whole thing over again. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we're living in very interesting times.
Can I jump into the incubation model that you guys have developed? Because when I look within the e-com world, it's kind of the holy trinity of, we have brands, we have an agency, and we've some SaaS modeling. Yeah. How does that work internally?
Yeah, it's different every time. Like there's no way to templatize it, I think. Canopy was the first one that we really went deep on. That was fully homegrown, fully home incubated. Everything from like, hey, the three of us are just hustling on this in our time in between working on Doris. And then we got to the point where we brought a guy on, his name's Eric, to lead all things on the marketing side. And, over time, the business has grown and we've brought people in and we were able to raise a little bit of money for it. But like largely it's been, incubated and supported by Doris. And now it's a 25-person company and it's ripping. The second one was a software play called Factored Quality. Managed services SaaS platform for booking quality control inspectors anywhere in the world. So like the best way to think about it is, if you're familiar with Flexport, it is what Flexport was for freight forwarding is what Factored Quality was for quality control. So we spun out our quality control team out of Doris Dev, and it was actually, we kind of, the way that it all came together is we were in collaboration with a team that had just come out of Y Combinator on a product lifecycle management platform, which didn't really pan out. And as all great YC companies do, they pivoted. And so, we basically like acqui-hired a team and spun it back out, and they went out and raised money against it. And they sold to Pietra last year. But so that was the other. That was the second incubation, and the third one is Rally. So, and this one also a little bit different. That this actually started as somebody approaching us to say, "Hey, we want to build this product," and it led to like, "Listen, we're not experts in how to build these brands. Like, do you guys want to come on as operating partners in this business and like build a deeper partnership than just like a service level provider?" So there's no one way to get it done. We want to put more shots on goal for sure. I think there's so much interesting opportunity out there, and having product in house is,
super valuable.
We were talking about this maybe before we're from, maybe not, but like, it's a non-commoditized thing. Yeah, so like having that as the core competency around what you can incubate is a bit different than being like, we're great at branding.
Sure. Yes.
Because like our office is in Dumbo. I can walk down the street and walk into 50 different studios that do branding work, right? And it's not to denigrate anybody's work. Like everybody's hustling and working hard. It's just to say there's commodity work and there's non-commoditized work. And building high quality product is really hard to do. So having that at the center of incubation, I think is really interesting.
It's so when we start Wayflyer, it was obviously we were trying to reduce risk of how we lend to people. Sure. So the way we did that was we would look at an online business and we'd say, let's get an understanding of how good they are at advertising. Yeah. And if they're really good at advertising, let's give them money. Yeah. Okay. Now in HappyStack, what we do is we go and work with software businesses and we sell for them. Yep. Because the idea of selling for a business first gives you feedback to tell you if there's desire and demand for the product. So you're able to de-risk, in theory, a project before you start it or before you invest in it. Yeah. One's lending, one's investing, but it's the same concept. How do you decide, like, let's go work on Canopy, let's go work, because from a de-risking point of view, do you get me? Or how do you know it's going to work in advance? Why do you pick that one versus not picking whatever else?
It does go back. So it does go back to unique positioning or unique modality, like genuinely a unique and net new product. So I think those are two pieces of the puzzle. I think that a replenishment model is the most important thing, and figuring out where there are opportunities to have folks on subscription, like, genuinely does change the game.
So that's like a hard requirement for any brand.
It's not because we launched this. But it's also, this is a little bit of a different game. It's a higher price point product, and I think that there's a lot of IP associated with this. So you're kind of like making some different bets than you are in a more commoditized space, like a humidifier, right? So, like, I'd love to be like, 100% we rooted in data. I think there's like part of it that is actually just like vibe.
Yeah, of course. And
when I first started telling people about Canopy, people were like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What do you mean a humidifier? Or like, what do you mean you're going to position it as a beauty tool? Like, what are we talking about? And like, now people are like, wow, what a great idea. It's like, well, we believed in it from the beginning, right? And I think that the amount of ideas, I love working on all the products that come through the door, because I think that I never know, I'm frequently pleasantly surprised with what folks are able to do because of an insight that they have that I don't share. And so I've seen people come through the door that have raised $5 million pre-seed and fall flat on their face immediately. And I've seen people like scrape together 40 grand on a Kickstarter and like get their parents to kick them 10K, get a whole business off the ground because they grinded it out and like launch an incredible company. And so I'm like, I'm not calling balls and strikes, right? Like, and like, look at VC success rate. Like, they're not very good at it either. So like, I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, I've got some secret sauce.
Do you know what? It's harder for you because product life cycle is so long.
Yeah.
If product life cycle was shorter, you can jump on a trend.
Correct.
Yeah. And say, okay, this is trending. We can make it quickly. Let's make a product that's just measurably better because we know how to do product. But if that takes 18 months, that trend might be gone.
Correct.
And so it's, there's...
And trends can go very, very quickly.
Yeah, they do,
like,
big time.
Canopy has been I like will bang on this point all the time, which is people do not think about product development as a growth channel, but it is. And the idea that you're going to build a $100 million company with one SKU doesn't make any sense to me. And that's because you do not know when the trend is going to break against you. And like your product might be cool today, but in 2 years, it might not be that interesting to a lot of folks. And every year that goes on, the idea that, oh, I did 5 million in sales or 10 million in sales or however many, and I'm going to continue to grow at a 50% clip or 100% clip year over year without adding more things into the mix is really, it doesn't make much sense to me. And for Canopy, that's been the entire thesis of how we're going to build and grow this business. And like now it's full throttle. It's like put as many shots on goal as possible. And like this year, we launched a few products like.
But you know what? It comes back to what you said earlier of there are trends and then there are existing products with a new positioning and a new design around everything. And if something has been around for 10, 20, 30 years and you're just figuring out a way to make it look nicer, function better, reposition it from a marketing point of view, that's a winner.
That's a winner.
Yeah.
Because like that you can put a bunch of shots on goal. Things are going to decline over time. People aren't going to stop buying humidifiers. They've been around forever.
Yeah.
Like, will bathtub filters last in perpetuity? Hopefully.
Yeah.
But like, nobody's going to guarantee that, right? So like, if you're not continuing to try and figure out where else in the category you can start to play, and that can be depth too, right? It can be depth in your product assortment. It doesn't just need to be breadth, but like, as Canopy's as Canopy's product line has grown, the amount of folks that come through the door because of the bathtub filter, and now they're like have 3 humidifiers in their house is high, right? And like that's the gift that keeps on giving. And now all of a sudden they've got 3 humidifier filter subscriptions. They've got a bathtub filter subscription. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and like that's where it becomes super interesting.
So for founders who don't go through you guys and they decide to go through the development process themselves, like what are the most common pitfalls or issues that they run into?
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have a mature company come to us and say, hey, we're working with this supplier on this thing and we want you guys to plug in. And then we dig into it and it's like, it's 5 guys in a garage in Shenzhen. And so like, I think that's one piece of the puzzle is like, make sure you know who you're working with.
Sorry, does that mean going to the factory and meeting people?
It might be paying a third-party inspector to go to the factory floor and verify and validate that they have relevant certifications, that they actually have the human beings that they claim they do, that they actually have the equipment on the floor that they say they do. 2 is they don't realize how much they're getting marked up if they're working through trading companies. I've heard horror stories about folks like, coming out of the backside of something, learning that they're getting marked up 100% day in, day out on product. And it's like, okay, like, and that's in perpetuity, right? Until you dislodge yourself from that.
So essentially the person that they're interacting with is not the factory. Right. It's just a broker.
Yeah, which again is not uncommon in the space. Like it's not even in propriety necessarily. It's more just like make sure that you understand what your product should cost. And like if you're working through a trading agent, make sure you're paying them a reasonable amount of money in the context of all of it. And then I would say like you need to trust but verify, right? So like if you're relying on your factory to do all of the quality control, like there is a misalignment in incentive structure as a result of that. Spending an extra $300 to send somebody down to the factory floor as your representative for the day to check a relevant amount of product and make sure what you have coming off the line works is really important, because the last thing in the world you want is like an entire batch of defective units gets loaded onto a container, gets shipped out, and now all of a sudden you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in time out, right? Like
creatine gummies,
big time,
Yeah, biggest scandal ever. I mean, tons of different companies, probably all using the same manufacturers, where all of a sudden it fucks up an entire industry nearly,
Yeah,
so, yeah,
100%. So like those are the things that I would say are like the most important. And I think that there are plenty of types of products that people can go take a stab at. And I've met some folks that I've been incredibly impressed by them becoming engineers themselves and like really going deep and like getting into it. But even in a world of like engineering support for these types of initiatives, there are folks that are 20 years into their career that have only ever worked on 1/3 of the process. Yeah. And so the idea that like, hey, this guy's a professional engineer and this is his purview and he would be out of sorts on the rest of it, like, you should work with professionals, whether or not it's Doris Dev or not, to really like support you, who have your best interest in mind, because you can get taken around the block a million times and find yourself in a really, really rough situation. So I would say trust but verify is probably the third thing. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
I love it. Thanks, Emil. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, guys.